Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for our weekly episode of So Chatty, and it's episode 30, and I call it Walter's Sewing Adventure because today it's all about Walter and what he's been up to the last 3 days in a row, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week from 9 to 5. So, just before we get into that, what am I going to do? Oh, yeah, I'm going to show you some pictures as well of what Walter was at. Supposed to end up with bitch. At bitch.
Oh, there were a few in there.
Oh, well, okay. Well, we're going to talk about them, too. But, okay, so basically, an overview of what was this all about? What was it that you were doing?
Well, the guy that teaches my class for...
Brandon. Did interview with Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon, who teaches my sewing group, has a lot of the knowledge he's gained for the last couple of years while he started sewing was through a professional sewist or whatever that's in Canada that his name's Ron Collins, and he gets a lot of his tips and tricks from this individual and how to do sewing techniques and everything. And he has taken several classes with Ron since the beginning of the time that he started sewing, and he thinks he's really worthwhile to go to these classes and learn more about things that techniques he uses in sewing. So Brendan got a hold of Ron Collins. He lives in Saskatoon, Canada.
Carry on. Just keep talking.
And he will fly to various areas of the country and do presentations. So
I'm just going to pause you for a minute.
Yeah, so Ron you can hire him to come and speak to your group for sewing. The only problem is he has to come from Saskatoon, and so he has to fly here and bring all his stuff here, and you have to put him up somewhere and stuff like that, so that can get quite costly, plus you have to rent a hall. But luckily Brendan's associated with the club, and he was able to secure a facility to do it in that was fairly good and for a reasonable cost, and brought Ron out for a reasonable price to do these classes. I mean, they weren't particularly cheap, but they were very worthwhile.
Okay, so when you say not particularly cheap, what did the 3 days cost you?
Well, each day was $140. So my 3 days was $420 Canadian.
So
plus there was some material costs to the tune of about $40. So
okay, so I can just show here. I'm just going to switch over and show a picture of what the class looked like that Walter was in. Brendan took these pictures and he put them up on his Facebook page. So here's one. So there you go. You can see Walter's just sitting over here. There he is. And the guy that instructed the class, Ron Collins, this is him here. Not particularly good picture of him. But as you can see, the facility was pretty good, actually. We're impressed, or you were impressed by the facility, because this is some place that is basically a type of nightclub, and so they rent it out during the day for various events. And well, I haven't seen it in many years inside of it, but I thought, oh, they're going to have it in that place. But you said actually, and it looked like it from the pictures, pretty good.
Yeah, it was actually very good.
So what have you got here? A big bucket of extension cords?
Yeah, that came from our place.
We collect extension cords, just another one of our hobbies. Well, not really, but we have a lot of them. And then there's another shot here, if I can get it up here. Okay, so there's Walter standing right there, and this is the instructor, Ron. And you can see that Walter was... Well, one day there was another man in the class besides Brendan. I think you saw him in the other picture, but that's Ron. So let's talk a little bit about Ron Collins here. I'll switch back over to us. So Who is Ron Collins?
Ron Collins is a fairly famous person in the sewing world, a garment sewing world in Canada. He's been around for a long time, but he does give you a little bit of background on him. He has never formally gone to any kind of sewing type school or anything like that. He is self-taught. He has worked with other designers and gotten tips from and techniques from sewing techniques from these other designers. So it's not that he doesn't have any formal education, but he has a lot of practical education on how to do sew garments and things like that. And he passes that information along to his students. He is actually very charismatic or whatever. He's very good at keeping you engaged and passing the information. The classes aren't boring. You're always feel like you're learning something, not new, but at least learning a new technique. Or it's very interesting to watch him do the classes.
He also has designed patterns for Vogue, has he?
Yes, he does. Actually, I have a copy of one of a future project that I'm going to do, and this is a sample of one of his patterns. And he does mainly male clothing patterns. And if you pick up a Vogue catalog and go to the male section, he is prominently featured in this Vogue catalog. So.
You can also do a search on the internet for Ron Collins and Vogue, and you will find some more pictures of his patterns and things like that. And I think it'll take you actually right to the Vogue site where the patterns are. And I think you can order them right there if you wanted them too, in case you don't have, you can't find them in your local fabric store, whatever that is. So he's fairly prominent. I think you might be able to find him if you do a bit of a search on YouTube as well. Now, I don't think he has a YouTube channel, but he's been featured on other YouTube channels over the years. And I think you can find him on those as well.
Yeah, a lot of the videos he has are older videos. He was doing like an older show about 10 or more than 10 years ago with another designer. I can't remember what her name is. And they were doing a series of shows on YouTube that way. But actually, he doesn't actually do any of his own YouTube videos or anything like that. And he does work for Janome as a presenter, and I guess he teaches some classes through Janome as well. So,
but ironically, you said that he had two sewing machines, and one's a Janome and one's a Spadina.
Yeah, he has two sewing. He said to us, he has two regular type sewing machines that he uses. One's a Spadina 5 series or something, I can't remember, and the other one is the Janome straight stitch machine.
So did you ask him which one he preferred?
Well, he said he liked both of them. It's just that he likes the Janome one because it's the more of the professional one that does just straight stitch. And it's he laughed. He says he likes the speed. But he has other sewing machines too. He has sergers and cover stitch machines, and
he has a
Shashiko machine.
Shashiko,
yeah, which is the only company that produces a Shashiko or whatever machine.
Sashiko, I think it's Sashiko.
Is Baby Lock. It's the only only company that produces that machine. And some of his clothing he has embellished with Shashiko stitches, and they're quite impressive.
Okay, so, and where does he come from?
He lives in Saskatoon. So, and he was born in Saskatoon.
Oh,
just north of Saskatoon.
He's a native to Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Now, you said that, well, of course.
He comes from a big family. I think he has like 5 brothers and 4 sisters, or the other way around, 4 brothers and 5 sisters or something.
I was just looking up here what I said earlier about the Vogue things, his patterns and something. think I can find it here and show everybody what that looks like if it opens up. Let's just see, go down.
Yeah, that's the shirt.
Okay, so here's some, I'll just flip this over here so other people can see. So here you can see these are some of his other patterns that are available. Again, I just went into Google and put in Ron Collins and Vogue. So you can see his shirts. Actually, looks like they flip around.
Yeah, they're two different styles.
And I'm not sure there if they're showing the shirt or they're showing the shorts, or maybe both.
Yeah.
And jackets as well. And jackets are very difficult. But here you can see on this, if we do a closer up view of it, closer up view, good English, linen jacket. But if you take a look at the stitching,
you can actually see that a lot of the stitching that's done on there is the Sheryl style stitching.
So in around here,
yeah,
and that. Yeah, that one's gives you a good
now,
shot
one of our classes that we did in the 3 days is this particular item is showing rounded pockets on the front. He showed us how to get these rounded pockets even.
Oh,
because apparently it's very difficult to do that. So that was one of the valuable lessons that we did. So.
Okay, and that pattern is out of print, apparently.
Well, yeah, it has a few that are out of print, and then it depends. He says, well, the way it works, I guess, with these pattern companies is that you basically sell the pattern to the company, and they do whatever they want with it.
So he doesn't make royalties or anything off the pattern. So it must cost him a fair amount of money. When you said you paid over $400 for 3 days, but he has to fly from Saskatoon to where he's going. He has to have accommodation. He has to have meals and all of that. And he brings quite a few things along with him.
Actually, he had a lot of clothing, sample clothing. Plus, he had, I'll talk about this later, in one of the classes, he has a fitting for jean type, 2 types of jean patterns. And he brings 37 jean samples with him.
But how does he get those all on a plane?
Well, actually, he has 2 very large suitcases that he says both weigh 50 pounds each. And he had 2 huge boxes that he had shipped. I don't know what shipping company he uses, but he had it shipped to his location. And he had to pack them all back up again and have them shipped back again. So,
well, that's a lot of cost, really, in there. So when you think about it, what he's charging, like $120 a day.
140 a day.
140 a day. Well, and how many were in your class? 10?
There was averaged about 10. There was one day we had the jean fitting day. I think we had 11. So. Well,
it's not bad, but it's not huge money.
No, it isn't. Really. He isn't making.
It's not. Like
I don't think he's making a ton of money out of it. Now the classes were probably a little bit more reasonable for us because the person organizing it wasn't. I don't think he was getting any money out of it, and he was able to get the hall very cheap, and he really wasn't really there wasn't any huge amount of extra expenses that normally a regular company would have to charge. Like if it was a regular sewing center, you'd expect the sewing center to get some money from it. You'd expect they would have to rent a hall, and that would cost money, and then additional expenses and everything. So I don't know. They did a little bit more cost saving for the.
Well, he stayed at Brendan's, right?
I'm not sure if he did or not, but I'm not 100% sure if he did or not. Okay. Because he didn't talk about getting out of the hotel. So I don't know.
Well, maybe he
was staying in a hotel. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all cost on it too. So if anybody thinks that being in this kind of business is going to make you millions of dollars, don't think so. There's a lot of overhead.
I think he makes most of his money doing shows and presentations and things like that.
Okay, so moving on, is there anything else you want to say about Ron Collins at the moment before
No.
we get into the nitty gritty? Okay, so you had 3 days of this. So what was the first day all about?
The first day was basically showing you how to do pattern adjustments. And a lot of the pattern adjustments were geared for women because, well, that's what we mostly attend his classes. But he tells you as a male that a lot of these are pertinent to males as well, just depending on your body shape and everything. Of course, the women patterns, they're focusing on adjustments for the bust and stuff like that. So, but
I don't know. You get to a certain age with men, you may have to adjust for the bust too.
yeah, so the class was in two sections. The morning session was mostly upper body measurements and focusing on doing like upper body adjustments to a pattern. So, and he gave you, we had workbooks that he gave out, and it explains in these workbooks how to do alterations, and there were some samples that we did on pattern samples of how you would do an alteration on on a particular piece.
Did you make those samples, or did he have those included in the book?
He had them included. We had to cut them out.
Oh.
It was cut and paste. But actually, it's really good because he shows that, you know, if you adjust one section of the pattern, if you're adjusting one section in the pattern, it ends up affecting other parts of the pattern. So you have to make adjustments to more than one section of a pattern. So it's not just that you pinch in a section in the corner and expect to just take it out that way. It starts causing other pieces to move around, and you have to make adjustments.
So on the first day, did you have any epiphanies, any eureka moments, something that he taught you that you'd never thought of before or didn't know about before?
Well, actually, just the fact that you can't just make a tuck in the corner and assume it's going to change the way a piece of clothing fits, right? Like, I mean, yeah, a lot of times you can do that, but then there's other things that you do that it causes a problem if you try and adjust it. And I guess that is really, that was really a worthwhile thing to have to think about.
So his teaching style then, you were saying that he would bring people up.
Yeah,
to show
actually,
them?
what he would do is, well, in the adjustments, what we were doing is we had a very large projector that took up one wall of the screen. Like it was, I don't know, must have been about a 200-inch or more projector that filled the entire screen. And he would have camera pointing down at his station to show us the pattern alterations. And what he also did was, it wasn't just these little pieces of paper. He had actually had actual pieces of pattern. Like, you can't really see it in that photo, but actual.
Well, I don't have the photo up there.
Yeah.
I was looking for the one where you guys were standing around him. Okay, why can't I find it? Anyways, carry on.
Yeah, he would have us come up at times, and he would show us what he was doing for an alteration or whatever up front, and then or sometimes it would be on the screen as well, in addition to add to what he was telling us. And he came around to make sure we understood.
Yeah, carry
He
on.
came around to, when we were working on making the alterations at our desk on the little samples, he came around to make sure we understood what it was that you had to do to make that alteration. And it wasn't just that. All 3 days it was like that. He would do a demonstration, talk about it. He would, as a matter of fact, in some of his demonstrations, he would, when it pertained to something, he would show an example. Like, he had several clothing examples with him. So, like, if he showed an alteration or something, he might have a sample with him of an actual piece of clothing and show you where an alteration was done. And it was really informative that way.
I see that just as an aside here too, that everybody was being COVID conscious about this.
Yes.
Did people have to be double vaxxed?
Yes.
Okay, good thing. And I see everybody's wearing their mask, except Ron's wearing his a little wrong. But
Yeah,
of course,
well, I kept slipping down on it.
of course, it's not easy to give a presentation and wear a mask at the same time, I'm sure. But okay, so anything else about day one?
No, actually, we had the morning was top measurements for tops. The afternoon was pants measurements and alterations, and it focused, like on what to do if you had a flat bum, or if you had a protruding bum,
Or a bubble butt?
or yeah, or just other types of alterations that you had to do with pants, for taking in legs and things like that. They weren't quite as severe. Also, if you had things like, or if you were bow-legged or knock-kneed, right? So, I mean,
I'm sure there were a lot of women in there that were going to admit,
oh,
yeah, I'm bow-legged.
he also
Knock-kneed.
talked. This was very interesting that he talked about was adjusting a fly front on. Adjusting a fly front on patterns. Some of the patterns have the fly front angle, and I think they do that mostly a lot of times on women's clothing. And he was suggesting that you move the fly front further in, because what happens is, I guess on ladies' clothes when they have a fly front, what ends up happening is that they'll get tucks that run across the front.
Yeah.
Right? And it's caused by that fly front being angled. So if it's more of a straight, the fly front should be perpendicular, no, in the same parallel to the grain line. So that was kind of interesting, because he showed, and he even showed it on the front of a design pattern, where the models were showing the, like it's one of these, not a Ron Collins pattern, but I think it was a Simplicity or something like that. And it showed all these photos of women wearing these pants that were on the pattern. And they, even in the pattern, it showed these lines showing up in the pattern. So it's one of those things that you don't really think about, and it was interesting to have somebody suggest.
Well, it seems he focuses on detail, on
Yeah,
fine
he does.
detail.
He's very careful. He says he likes clothes that fit well. So that was it. And then the last part of the day is he had a section in the book that went through all the different body measurements that you have to do. For your own body. And he also had tips and tricks on how to do that as well. Like to get the measurement of the neckline, you wear a pair of necklaces, a necklace, and it sits in the right spot on your neckline for measurements and things like that. So it was really informative.
Well, for somebody who's never really taken a class to learn this stuff, he must have learned it somewhere.
Oh yeah,
Picked it up.
no, he does. He doesn't have a formal, what do you call it? What do they call those designer?
He
He doesn't have a fashion college diploma or anything like that. But he's been sewing since he was a kid, and he learned to make his own clothing, and then he has met many designers over the years and have worked with other designers on developing patterns for clothing. So it's practical taught, not so much formally taught.
So in other words, he's teaching from his experience and things like that. So, okay, so the second day, what was that all about?
The second day was focused on, it was a 3-day workshop compressed into one. So we didn't get a lot of sewing done that day, and it focused mainly on fitting jeans to people.
I imagine for ladies especially, that was probably very informative, because you always hear about them talking about how hard it is for them to find a pair of jeans that really fit them the way they would like them to fit.
So what he had done, not so much his his classes are geared towards women because most of the women take it. In my case, I had to. I'll get to that in a minute, but mine was a slightly different because I was male. But
You are?
yeah.
Surprised.
So anyway, but what he did was he had two jean patterns that were available. One was more of a tight legging style jean, and the other one was more of a loose fitting traditional jean pattern. And you had to pick between one or the other pattern to use. And what he did was he brought in 37 pairs of different size jeans in the two patterns.
Holy crap.
Well, I mean, it was 37 for, not 37 for each pattern, but combined patterns, right? And he had pretty much every size that anyone could want to fit in, right, for women. And so what basically he did is you had to pick a size based on your waist size and pick a sample. You could try several samples if you wanted, and get one on that you felt comfortable in. And then what he would do is he would fine tune it, have you come to the front, and he would help you alter your pattern to fit your body. Right? And in my case, because he didn't have any male samples, I had to make my own sample, which I did. I made this.
You made that beforehand, though,
I
right?
made this beforehand based on my pattern, right? So, and as you can see, he pinned up, I don't know if you can see it very well, he pinned up my pants to alter my pattern so it would fit better. Because in my case, mine didn't fit too badly, but the legs were a little bit wide, and and around the back here it was a little loose, right? So
Baggy drawers.
he did tighten that up a bit. And what he did was I had a copy of a trace a pattern copy of my pattern, and he showed me where to trim the sections off or alter it so that it would fit me better. I have yet to make that, but see on the
So is that your muslin?
yeah, on the 3-day class, that's my muslin. Yeah, I don't have a zipper in it. It's all,
Well, you could almost wear those.
it's open. Yeah, almost. I'd have to put a zipper in it.
And you'd have to
And I-
get a pair of appropriately colored
and
underwear.
put back pockets on it. But actually, I even went to the extreme of making pockets for this thing, so it's pockets.
Well, next time we go to a white party, you'll have
Yeah, I
pants.
know. So
We go to so many.
So anyway, so yeah, I went a little bit overboard with making the muslin, but actually the ones he made were pretty elaborate too. He didn't have any pockets in them, but he did have a snap in the top so they could do it up. So actually, it was pretty good. And like he said, he did this when COVID hit because he was idle. He couldn't do anything else. So he went out and bought 40 yards of jean material
Holy crap.
and made all of these pants out of it. And he had leftover jean material, which is kind of ingenious. He showed us a pair of jeans he made from leftover jean material. It wasn't long, the pants weren't long enough to cut a full leg out. So what he did is he pieced the leg by, it was like a short leg, like almost like shorts. And then he took the bottom piece of a piece of fabric and put it on at the knee type of thing. So like there would be a seam at the knee. But to cover up the seam, he did decorative stitching all around the front of the knee.
Okay.
So it didn't really look like it was pieced, but it was pieced.
So he's just not technically accurate and all that, but he's also very creative.
He's
as
creative
well.
and inventive, and he did things too. Like he altered the original design of my waist on here. The original design of the waist is a one-piece straight piece of material. He says, well, for pants you really need a curved piece because your bum is curved, right? So
Some are.
so he said you really need it. And he said that he didn't like one piece waistbands. He said he liked two-piece waistbands because it gives you more opportunity for movement and that. And so what he does is he has a two-piece waistband. He made this into a two-piece waistband. And also he showed a technique whereas normally waistbands have you fold it at the front here, and it's bulky here, right? There's a lot of bulk, so it's fat when you close it, right? Well, we showed a technique where you would move the bulk from this waistband over to the other side here, and you'd end up having a less bulky waistband. And so I've got that written down, and I'm going to have to try that next time. So normally this is a 3-day workshop. One day, the first day's fitting, which he did that day, and then he would have the other 2 days for people to sew, cut out and sew. So, but actually, it was worthwhile just to have that 1-day class. So it gave me a little insight on how to alter pants in the future, and we got some techniques out of it, and it was he's very entertaining and very easy to listen to. So.
Okay, so day 3, what was that all about then?
Day 3 was all about pockets and seam finishes. So in day 3, he showed us how to do a rounded pocket, and we had samples to do. He just had muslins and to do sample pockets, and so he showed us how to do. My sewing's not the best on here, but how to do a rounded pocket, right? Like this, to get an even, nice, rounded pocket, and showed us how to create that with a rounded flaps. So that was very interesting.
Didn't he show you too how you could do a pocket that doesn't have any stitching?
Hang on, you needed a template to do this. You can buy it. It's a unique item. It's called Unique is the company, and you can buy this template that helps you make the rounded pocket. But he showed us a technique and how to use how to create this a little easier. So that, and then there's also a technique that he showed us where you would be able to create a pocket but not have any outside stitching on it, right? So and it's using trace a pattern interfacing to get it, and your pocket bag actually is a lining on the inside. So when you put your hand in it, you're actually putting your hand into the lining inside, and that is actually your pocket. And then you make this flap to cover the pocket that makes it look like a regular pocket. And you do have to hand stitch this down.
Oh,
but it is. He says you don't have to stitch it down so intense that it's actually your pocket, because your actual pocket is the lining, right? It's just a decorative cover. So that's more like on a suit or something like that. But I thought that was very valuable because any of the pockets I've done are just square ones, like on shirts and stuff like that. So I thought that was an interesting technique to learn. And then in the afternoon, he covered all of the seam finishes that you can do. And that included something called a boiled wool seam finish.
boiled wool.
Yeah, if you had wool fabric and you wanted a seam finish inside a coat or something like that, he showed how to do that because that fabric doesn't fray. So you don't really need to cover it up. And then he did something called seam allowance with a 1/4 inch turn underneath, a French seam, a double French seam, a Hong Kong seam finish, a bound seam finish, a fake flat felt seam, a flat felt seam, and then he showed us something interesting. He had a shirt where you had these darts that came out from the center as a decoration, and there is a way to thread your sewing machine with just using your bobbin thread. And what that does is that your bobbin thread loops, right? So normally you have 2 threads, right? But your bobbin thread loops so that when you sew the dart, right, you don't have to cut off the end of the thread, because it's actually a loop in your thread and it was very interesting showing that. Somebody asked him, okay, so how did you find that knitting technique out? How'd you figure that out? And he laughed. He said, somebody showed me. So, and it involves just using the bobbin thread, and bobbin thread actually also threads through your sewing needle and back through the back of your machine.
Okay, that's just,
It
I'd have to
sounds
see
very,
that.
it sounds very complicated, and it looks very complicated. It's sort of a simple idea, but you're basically sewing with your bobbin thread, and your bobbin thread is also going through your sewing needle as well.
Sounds kind of complicated, but whatever. So, now backing up here for a second, you mentioned the fact that he likes to use decorative stitches for things on his clothing and everything like that. But he does this sashiko, Japanese stitch, and does he do that a lot? Does he use that a lot?
It's a fair bit of it on his clothing, but he actually has other things that he showed, like he showed using like just the decorative stitches on your machine.
Yeah.
Right. And or there's a way, what else he showed was using a decorative stitch in addition to a piece of ribbon on the front.
Oh.
Right. And the decorative stitches went over top of the piece of ribbon. And it looked really neat because you had a shiny piece of the ribbon on there, and then decorative stitches over top. And then he also said, well, you can't just do decorative stitches on cloth because you need stabilizing below it, right? So there is actually a tape that you can buy, which is actually water soluble stabilizer that we use for embroidery, but it's sticky on one side. So you can run it along the seam underneath your clothing, and it stabilizes your seam.
So does he have an embroidery machine?
I don't believe he does.
So anything
I don't know if he does.
decorative-
Actually, I don't know if he does. I didn't ask. Should have asked.
So I just wondered, since he's into a lot of that kind of detail, I thought he might find an embroidery machine useful for it. But then again,
I don't know. I can ask Brendan if he knows if he has one. None of his clothing seem to have embroidery style stitches on it. He does have these techniques that he does with sewing, like my collars on my shirts. I use the technique that Brendan was shown by Ron, and it's to remove the bulk from the tips of your collars. And how he does that, normally the collar is two pieces and that you sew together, and your bulk ends up on the tips of your collars. But what he does is he makes the collar one long piece, folds in the middle, and only difference is between that and a two-piece collar is you have a seam underneath your collar that goes up the back, and that's where your bulk is. And but there's no bulk in the tips, and it's things like that, little things like that.
well, you said that he showed you how to make biased.
Oh yeah,
tape.
he did show. There's one example where he showed us how to make bias tape, and it was really interesting. He just had a square of fabric, and he cut it down to two triangles and sewed it back together, and so you ended up having like a big diamond at the shape, but it was all on the bias, right? And then you drew lines down the diamond shape, and then you closed the two ends together, and you ended up having something circular, right? And then he said you could just take your needles out of your serger, and you had to cut down the lines, and it was like a continuous loop on this piece of cloth, and you ended up with this great big piece of binding that was all sewn together on the bias.
Actually, when you were telling me about that yesterday, I thought, I've done something like that, and I just remembered now what that was. It was in one of the Annie bags that I made, that control, the control bag, they called it, and you're making binding, it has to go around curves and that around the bag, and that's how they do it. They laid their cloth on the bias on it, and you made it into like a tube, and then you cut it, and you had one continuous strip that would also, because it was done on the bias, you could bend it around the curves you needed to go through. Of course, the only difference there was I wasn't cutting it on the serger like to open it up. I'll have to look that up though. I think it's the same technique with that. But anywas, I just thought of that now when you were talking about it.
So it was. I'm sure it's not a new technique. It's just new to me, right? But he shows you all these different little things that really kind of, but actually what he's done is he's taken things that he's had a problem with and figured out a solution.
So, Ben, I would say from what you've told us about this that this was a very well worth experience, well worth the money, the whole bit, and the time. Doesn't sound like you did a lot of sewing, but I guess because you were learning
No, actually,
fitting
the
and
first day
techniques.
on the fitting, we didn't do very much sewing. The most sewing that we did was the last day, and basically it was he would bring us up to the front, show us the seam finish, right, and we had some sample material, and we go back to our desk and sew the sample, and he would come around and check what you were doing and to make sure you understood how to do it.
So, if there was one aha moment, one epiphany that you had out of those 3 days, what's one thing that really stands out in your mind? You had a lot of techniques.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me it was the pant fitting thing and how to alter the patterns. But there were so many things that he said over the 3 days that were just amazing tidbits of information to learn. And it's hard to just like point at one and say this is like fantastic.
Yeah.
But the classes moved along well. They weren't boring. You know how sometimes you get a class and it's a dead spot, but there wasn't any dead spots in it. You're always learning something new. He was entertaining. He would get off topic a little bit sometimes and tell you a story.
So, did you run into anybody participating in these classes that was a bit of a, oh, how do you put it gently, a bitch?
Well, there was a couple of people that might have been a little on the difficult side, but he seemed to be able to manage them well.
Okay. Well, you said he's got lots of charisma and things like that. And of course, you're now a fanboy.
Oh, yeah.
You came home every night after your classes. Ron did this and Ron said that. And, ooh, Ron, you're so dreamy.
Well, after that, he's kind of attractive, too. So.
Oh, okay. Didn't hurt. No, okay, fine. So, anything else you want to say about your experience that you haven't already said 3 times over?
It was a really good experience. I wouldn't hesitate to take one of these classes. I think doesn't matter what level of a sewer you are. There's always something new to learn. Some new techniques that he has that he can tell you about, and he's someone that if if it's not on the course or something, you want to ask him a question and that like troubles you or something, he's really quick to point out something else that isn't really part of the class type of thing.
So I would say the 3 days sound like they went off without a hitch and so I think a shout out to Brendan is probably appropriate because he's the guy who arranged all of this.
Brendan did a lot of work to get Ron to come out, and he set up the room. He brought in treats for everybody. He had coffee available. He was really good at getting this organized.
Yeah. So if you're not sure who we're talking about with Brendan, as already mentioned, this is the guy that teaches the online classes that Walter takes and has been taking now for over a year. And Brendan is somebody who only started sewing about 2 years ago. He knew nothing. And now he's teaching himself, and plus he takes a lot of Ron's classes as well. And I did an interview, if you haven't seen it already, about 2 weeks ago with Brendan on the Idiot Quilter Presents, so you may want to check that out because Brendan in himself is a very interesting person to listen to as well about his adventures in sewing. And keeping in mind that for somebody who's only started this about 2 years ago, or not much longer than that, he's come a long way in this. He might be the next Ron Collins.
He actually, on some of our sewing projects, he has actually changed some of the patterns that we were using to make them a little better for us, or made things that we didn't really like about the pattern and changed it for us for our glass. And so he does think outside the box as well, sort of like the Ron Collins thinks outside the box for, doing seam finishes and stuff like that. So he is really he doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's been teaching our classes. He's been learning from teaching the classes. Actually, a couple of ladies that were in our 3-day course have decided to join our sewing group.
So that's growing for him too. So anyways, well, I mean, after hearing all about this, it makes me kind of more interested in garment sewing. Not going there. I would not be able to do it. I know that. I could not handle all this stuff with the fitting and sewing. I don't think I could. No, I'm sticking to quilting. So
it is a different kind of sewing to do garments, so than doing quilting, and I don't know, it just appeals to me a little more than doing quilting.
Well, I don't need to learn how to garment sew. I've got you to make my outfits for me.
Yeah,
so
I'll get you to try on my pants to see.
Oh, so you want me to get into your pants? Okay. Well, that's a show for another day. Okay, so that's great. So that's what Wally's great sewing adventure this week. I was going to show you a couple of things of mine, but I don't think I will. I think this has been jam-packed with information as it is now, and I'll save those things for next week's Idiot Quilter. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this, and as we said, look up Ron Collins. It also comes up as a drink. Apparently, it's like a Tom Collins except with rum. But look him up on Google. You'll find references to him there. He's easy to find, and I'm sure you can check him out. And maybe, if you're interested in garment sewing, maybe he will be someplace close to wherever you live sometime. And by the sounds of things, it's well worth the investment to take one of his classes if you're really serious about, garment sewing. Okay, so that's it for us today on So Chatty. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time for, I don't know what we're going to talk about next. We'll see. Okay, see everybody later. Say goodbye, Walter.
Bye.